I'd like to call to order this March 4th, 2020 meeting of the Clearwater Downtown Development Board. We'll begin by welcoming everyone present and having our board members and ex officio members, which are absent today, introduce themselves, beginning on my left.
Raymond Casano.
Shahab Amrani.
Festus Pobeni.
Keenan Kinsel.
Paris Morphopoulos.
Venkat Devaneni.
Very good. So we'll move on to item number 2. Looking for a motion to approve the February 5th, 2020 DDB meeting minutes and to review the February 5th DDB special work session meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve these?
I second.
Very good. Is there any citizen comment? Very good. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Very good. It's unanimous. Let's move on to if there's any citizens that would like to come up and address us on any matters that might come before the board for items that are not on the agenda. You're welcome to come up at this point. There being none, we'll move on. Item number 4, new business items. Looking for a motion to adopt the January 2020 financial statement for filing. Anne?
Hi. All right. So we have here, excuse me, your ending of January 31st financials that was attached to your agenda. Just a quick recap. Remember, your fiscal year begins October 1. And the funds spent through the month of January were $11,369. Your ending balance as of January 31st is $296,540, and your cash in bank is $234,285. Any questions?
Yes. What explains the difference between the ending balance and the cash in the bank?
So the ending balance is what your ending balance that has not been paid in your approved budget. Your cash in bank is what you physically have in the bank as of January 31st. Excuse me. You also have not received all of your income, so all of your taxes that you would receive as the DDB, you have not received that money as of yet. So that is where some of the discrepancy is at.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Some outstanding checks, I'm assuming also.
Mm-hmm. So the DDB that the county receives all the tax money. They filter it through the CRA, then we issue it to the DDB, and then the DDB issues it back. So it's this nice, ebb and flow of money going back and forth. But we haven't received all that money from the county yet. It comes in a quarterly basis. So throughout the year, you'll see that money, the money that you receive as your income from the county for your TIF, it shows up throughout the year.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Okay, so we're looking for a motion to adopt the January 2020 financial statement. Okay,
Second it.
And a second. Okay, any other additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Anne.
Mm-hmm.
I assume Festus, since he's our keeping all of our books and finances, will go first.
No, your treasurer is
Venkat is the treasurer.
Yep.
Okay.
I think
Festus
that's
is
the
secretary.
Yes.
So you go over these with a fine-tooth comb, right?
Yes, I am. I was having the same doubt, but you just asked between the ending balance and this. That ending balance is more like the accrual method, and then the cash and bank is the cash that we normally report.
Yep.
Got it.
Very good. Okay, so now Howard, you're going to give us a presentation on free?
Well, actually, I'm not going to give you a presentation. I have Jasper Klein here and Nate Cicelli. They're the owners of Free Ride. I want to introduce them. Through my approximately almost 4 months of being here with the CRA, I had an opportunity of interacting with Nate Soselli and learning about Free Ride as a free travel concierge service. And as we think through this for future growth to try to drive foot traffic into downtown, this might be an opportunity for future programming. So with that, I'll introduce Jasper Klein to talk about Free Ride.
Okay.
How we all doing?
Good.
Thanks for having me. So yeah, my name's Jasper Klein. I'm the owner of Free Rides USA. We are a transportation / marketing company on Clearwater Beach. We have been in business for almost 10 years. We were originally Florida Free Rides until me and my partner purchased it about 15 months ago and rebranded everything. So pretty much what we do is we have a fleet of minivans that from 9 a.m. to 3 a.m. give free local rides on Clearwater Beach, Island Estates, and Sand Key. The only catch is the drivers just work for tips. So if you're happy with their service, tip the driver. Our whole concept is that each van is wrapped in an advertisement, which makes them mobile billboards, and that's how as a company we make our money. So we do marketing, which pays for the rides, and then we provide the service to the community. Last year we had over 150,000 customers ride with us on the beach. I don't know, how do I go to the next slide? Enter. Cool. Yeah, so like I said, last year we had 150,000 passengers. Our entire fleet went over 180,000 miles. We not only go up and down the beach, but when we leave Clearwater Beach, we can take people technically anywhere. Then we start operating as a flat rate car service. So airport shuttles, all the major attractions, sports, everything. We go everywhere. And we've pretty much become one of the major transportation companies on Clearwater Beach, if not number one, in terms of the amount of passengers and stuff that we're doing. The reason we were coming here today is because we would like to build a bridge between downtown Clearwater and Clearwater Beach. So I skipped ahead a little. This is our tracking system. Everything we do is trackable. All our vans are equipped with GPS, so we can watch and record every trip, every single location at the time, the distance, the speed, and where the vans go. So that really helps, you know, all our sponsors get a monthly report like, hey, your van traveled 3,000 miles this month, and here's a map of where it went. So they can really see where their billboard's being maximized and where we're bringing passengers and how many people are coming through their door. You know, our average riders coming on the beach are, I would say 75% are the tourists and visitors, and then the other 25% is our local population who uses to get to work, go around, and do different things like that. The visiting population, they're coming with us, and that's really where the marketing kicks in, because the average person on vacation is looking for where they can spend their money, what to do, where to eat. They want to know what the area has to offer, and that's where our drivers come in. Our drivers are trained mobile concierges, so they're doing more than just driving, and the ride's more than a ride. You know, you get someone who's trained professionally to drive you safely around and has been background checked opposed to like an Uber or something where there's always been a lot of issues and stuff, and also knows the area better than anybody because they're back and forth, you know, going hundreds of miles a day, seeing everything. So the people really trust us in terms of where we can bring them. They really trust our opinion. So the marketing side, we're bringing people to our sponsors' doors all day long. It's very unique what we're doing. This kind of service doesn't really exist anywhere the same way we're doing it. Especially now that we're picking up at the airport, we are the point of first contact for many of our customers when they first land to this area. So we're picking them off the airplane. We're the first people they see coming out of the hotels. We've made deals with all the concierges at the major hotels on the beach. They're handing our cards out. We are point of first contact. So some of the problems we solve out on the beach that also I think we could solve here in downtown Clearwater is one, the major one is parking. Parking is very limited and expensive on the beach. People choose to either not rent a car, they come from their hotels, they don't need to rent a car, they just call us, we get them around, it's much more affordable. For our locals, they don't want to drive, they know parking's a nightmare, this kind of solves that problem. Our biggest thing that we solve is drinking and driving. With our service out there, there's really no reason ever drink and drive in the areas we serve, especially since the rides are free. We will never turn, even if you don't have money for a tip, we'll never turn you down to make sure you're not getting in your car drunk instead of getting with us. Walking, a lot of our customers have, disabilities, accessible problems. We are very friendly to the elderly population. Anyone with any type of needs who can't make it around easily, we're there for them. Also, for the wallet, since it's a very affordable transportation option, it allows not only for us to be very, people can use us easily, but for our sponsors, we're bringing people there. They're not getting killed to get to the location, so they're spending more money at the places we're bringing to them. And then my favorite is traffic. The more people who are riding with us, the less cars are on the road, the less traffic you have to deal with getting between the beach and downtown. So what we really want to do is introduce ourselves and explore this option of building a bridge from Clearwater Beach to downtown Clearwater. Not only as a transportation source, but also for the local businesses, making it easy for people to get here. There's over 1 million people come to visit Clearwater Beach every year. The longer they stay, the more they've done everything on the beach. Downtown Clearwater is right here for them to explore. Right now, since it's out of our free zone, we charge $10 a ride for a group to come down here. What we're trying to explore is to figure out how to make that downtown Clearwater part of our free zone, like Island Estates is, like Sand Keys, so we can just freely bring people back and forth just for a tip. And because a lot of times when we recommend downtown Clearwater and then they find out it's a charge, it kind of, they'd rather stay on the beach. So expanding our free zone to downtown could, help economic development very much. And that's kind of where the transportation does that, but the marketing part of what we does that it well. It opens the door to downtown to the people visiting on Clearwater Beach. So it kind of kills two birds with one stone. I think that's all I got.
Question,
Yeah,
how many vehicles?
we have 6 right now.
Okay. And if you, how would you foresee a way of including downtown in your free zone? What would it take to actually accomplish that?
Off the bat, for me, in my opinion, it would take probably, with the fleet we have now, we could start definitely making a big impact. I think as it grows, we would be looking at needing more vehicles, which we already are just for the amount of business we're doing on Clearwater Beach. Also, I think there would be a lot of marketing push to go into it in the beginning because we already have the customers. It's now letting them know that downtown Clearwater is here. The reason our service works on the beach is because we've partnered with every hotel. We've partnered with all the businesses on the beach. We've, done a ton of marketing to the locals. Everybody knows us. There's like Shepherd's Beach Resort. You check into Shepherd's, our business card is in your key card holder. Same with the Hyatt. So partnerships and some groundwork along with marketing, I think to let the more and more people know that this is an option to get from the beach to downtown Clearwater and what downtown Clearwater has to offer. So there's a reason to come here, I think is what we're looking at.
Question. When someone pays, I guess at the hotel and beach, they say they want to come to downtown Clearwater, and they get on the van, they pay $10,
Mm-hmm.
and then how do they get a ride back?
It's also $10 back. So the van
That's $20 to.
for a round trip. A lot of times, we've done it both ways where people will come down here. They'll find some way down here. They'll get a ride, or they'll take an Uber, or they'll take a trolley, and then all those things, like the trolley stops running at a certain time, and then they'll call us and we'll come get them. But yeah, no, it's $20 round trip to get them back to the beach. And I think that's kind of the issue that we're trying to solve here is how to make that not $20 anymore, just free.
So what does it take?
It would take funding from a source. If like I said, we're here to introduce ourselves, but we're trying to figure out what amount of money it would take. So say, there's 1,000 rides at $20 a ride that we're expecting this year. It would be $20,000 that would need to be covered.
Does that incorporate the traffic jams on the bridge?
What do you mean?
The time during peak hours where your vehicle's sitting?
In terms of the price, it's always $10.
Okay.
There's no surge pricing or anything like that. Yeah, it's just flat rate $10.
What do you average occupancy wise per trip? Is it one person, 3 people?
Each vehicle holds 6 people. Our average trip is about 3.5 people when you break it down.
Does each person pay $10?
Nope, for up to 6 people.
But is it a shared ride or is it individuals only?
It's usually individuals, but there's been many instances where if there's 2 people going to the same place at the same time and we have room, we'll totally combine them
For the same price point?
for the same price.
How
I'm trying
does,
to get my wits around this. You're introducing yourself, but you're not really asking for anything?
We're not asking for anything today, just wanted to introduce ourselves and kind of let you know what we're working on, so we can come back to the next meeting and then make an actual, true proposal on what we're asking for.
I mean, I am curious how you would utilize that. Are you guys doing food tours or bringing people to the restaurants, let's say in downtown Clearwater and back?
Yeah, we have been. I mean, I would say for the last 15 months since I've been running the show over here, especially on Capitol Theater nights when there's a show, we get a ton of people. We're back and forth to the Capitol Theater. They're going to dinner beforehand. We're taking them straight from the hotels and coming back down here. But other than that, yeah, it's not the majority of our business coming to downtown Clearwater, and that's kind of what we would like to expand.
And you said sometimes you get people asking to come to downtown, but they don't want to because of the price point. Like how many people do you normally get asking for this?
A decent amount, I would say. I mean, we probably get 30 to 40 calls a week about downtown. I mean, this time of year right now is really crazy for us. In the next 6 months is really like our peak years where we do, about, I'd say 70% of our business in 6 months. Yeah, we get asked about it all the time. I think what beats us, just like anywhere else, is that Uber undercuts the market on transportation. So if Uber's willing to do it for 7 and we're doing it for 10, people a lot of times will go for that. But our trusted customers who are using us all week long, like most of our customers are people who come into town, they find out about us, and they'll start using us over Uber regardless of the price because they feel safer, they like our guys better. My drivers build relationships with everybody. It's just a lot more personable. You know who you're going to get. They know us by first name.
Good idea.
So one quick question. For the concierge service which you guys offer, when you get a customer, do they have to ask you where they want to go to, or you go, oh, by the way, we have things in downtown, we have things on the beach, or they have to ask you specifically?
When someone calls and orders a ride, we always ask, we need to know where we're picking them up and where we're going. Unless what we'll do is a lot of times people will call and be like, we're at the Sheraton Hotel and we really want to go to a restaurant, we're not sure yet. We'll still come get you, because then we'll help you figure that out. Most of the time when people are calling for a ride, they know where they're going. It's when they get into our vehicles, we have and this is part where the marketing comes in, we have tablets set up in each vehicle and the back headrest that play a slideshow of advertisements. And this is one of the best conversation starters besides what the driver is doing. So that highlights everyone who advertises with us. So you may see, a certain restaurant, like, how's Clear Sky? Because they see it on the screen. And then the driver will be like, Clear Sky is great. You got to try this while you're there. It's right here in downtown. We can take you there. And a lot of times, and I see it myself when I drive, you can sway people any way you want. They'll take your word over it. Even if they called you and said they wanted to go to Hooters, and you're like, hey, you came all the way to Clearwater. There's Hooters everywhere. Why don't we try something local? They'll be like, what? We didn't know any better, so we'll take your advice on it. It happens all the time.
I don't think who's love to hear you say that, actually.
Yeah.
But do you have any partnerships with the downtown restaurants?
Not right now. We do not have any partnerships with anybody in downtown. This is kind of a new thing for us, venturing over to this side.
Once you have partnerships, then the apps and the tablet displays, they'll be showing like the downtown restaurants, and people can see if they want to pick a downtown restaurant as their choice versus a restaurant on the beach.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what we're, for the next meeting, figure out is what kind of money do we need to open the service up to the area. And then once this is an option, then I'm going to go all over downtown and try, because I want our cards and all the restaurants and everyone to know that this is an option. Say somebody calls them like, hey, we're at the beach, we want to come here. Regardless of it, they should know that this service exists and they have the option. And then it would be trying to bring on people on board to advertise and market with us and get the whole process started.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you have a car wrapped like you have in the slide with Shepherd's?
Yep, we
logo
have.
and so on?
We
What
have
does that cost?
It costs $3,400 to wrap the vehicle, and then we charge $1,900 a month to the sponsor. So we have two right now with Shepherd's Beach Resort. We have one Palm Pavilion, one with the Tropics Boat Tours, and then one with Bob Hellman's Beachcomber. And we just got our sixth vehicle, which we're kind of in figuring out who's going to be on that one between a few different people.
Okay, so it's $3,400 for the wrap, and that doesn't include any time, plus $1,900 for the first month?
Yep. The $3,400 gets billed directly to the company we use. It includes the wrap being designed, the material. The material is 3M vinyl wrap material. It's got a 5-year warranty on it, even though I've seen it last a lot longer than that. It also comes with reflective paint, so if you see on there the Shepherd's symbol on there is in reflective paint, so at nighttime when light hits it, it glows, pretty much glows in the dark, so it has nighttime effect as well.
So free, to have that, to have a car wrapped and to keep it wrapped and on the road for 5 years would be 24 times 5, quite a bit of money.
When we sign people up, we sign them up on 1-year agreements because the wraps can easily be removed.
Sure.
So after 1 year, somebody, wanted to do something else with us, we could always rewrap the van to something else. But from my experience, everyone who's done one has pretty much come back for another after their time has expired. The vehicles themselves pretty much also only have a 4 to 5 year lifespan as well, because we're doing so many miles with them that you just, after a certain time, you can't keep them on the road anymore.
Right. Okay, so that's an interesting thing. One idea is to wrap a car with something about downtown. Another idea might be if you went around to the different places that you would be promoting your advertising to, like the restaurants and the theater and so on. Maybe the DDB could consider chipping in on part of their marketing cost. Like if they were paying you X amount a ride or whatever,
Yeah.
maybe the DDB could subsidize a portion of what they spent on
I mean, for
advertising.
the way I envision it for the maximum impact for the downtown would be, some kind of stipend to cover the $20 round trip or the $10 one-way rides. So it makes it very easy for the people to come here, and then put a very strong marketing plan behind it, like a downtown Clearwater van that maybe highlights 9 or 10 of the best spots down here, or whoever is involved, and then doing stuff in our TVs and just like the rest of our areas, incorporating it. There's a lot of different ways to go about this, big and small.
Okay. Any other questions?
How do you track, so it's $10 for downtown, but what if the guy in the car says, okay, now that I'm here, take me out to Philly Stadium?
Then it would be another charge to go all the way out there.
And then your drivers track that, or that's done through a computer system?
The drivers track it. So the way that our relationship with the drivers work is that they're independent contractors, and they pay a lease fee to use our vehicles every day. And then once they pay that fee, everything they make while they're out there for that day, they get to keep. So if they go to the airport, 5 times, they get every dollar from that.
So in that case, then DDB wouldn't know if they were subsidizing the $10 fee, whether there was human error or not.
Well, so the way I was thinking about doing it is if the driver is going to get that $10 coming here and somebody else is covering the cost, he would have to make a record of that ride, which then our tracking system can show, okay, he did come here, he was here, we saw him stop in front of, Clear Sky or something else, Lucky Anchor, and then he went back, and then we could track how many times that happened. So in order for the driver to get paid, he would have to report the ride actually happened. And I would say how many people, what time, and then I look it up in our system and just make a report of it, and then we can start tracking it that way. And
Do people flag your vehicles down, or is it just by telephone?
so mainly it's by telephone, but people do flag us down. We're not, if our phone's not ringing and a driver doesn't have a ride, most of the time they'll go and sit in front of Shepherd's or one of the other hotels that let us sit in front, and people will walk up all the time and we'll take them where they gotta go.
Good.
So are you guys interested in hearing a funding request?
I'd be interested in hearing some options on it. It would be a very significant part of our budget to do a year commitment on a wrap. It'd be a lot of money. So I don't think that, that seems like a big outlay for us. That would be a big chunk of our budget.
I think the individual businesses can take that option of wrapper if they want to, like Clear Sky can do that if they want to.
Yes. I personally, I'd be more inclined to support individual businesses that are going to put some marketing money of their own in and expand. We'll monitor what the return is and see if it's worth it for them. And then I would help them to do that. I would promote subsidizing something like that.
Yeah.
If you're proposing something, I'm interested, very curious, how it would help downtown. So it has to be something that you propose and take a look at it. And if it makes sense, why not? I don't think we have anyone, pretty much everyone here is a business owner, I'm assuming. So if it makes sense, why not? So, especially if you're willing to get a head start or pitch in something into it, so that way we know you're willing to take the risk, same as the group here. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
That's my viewpoint. I don't know what the.
Anyway, it's an innovative thing you're involved in. I like it.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's kind of I haven't heard of it. I wasn't aware that it was happening down on the beach. But
Yep.
I'm glad you've come and told us about it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
If you come back with a proposal, we'll seriously look at it.
All right. Yeah, I'd like to come back next month, maybe with, like I said, some options, maybe small to, medium to large on different things we can do and what we'd be looking at to cost, and then we can go from there.
Very good.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move on to item 4.3, discussion on DDB financial policy and procedures.
Okay, so this is part of the administrative house cleaning that we've been working on, and the financial policies haven't been updated since 2005. So we've got some recommendations for those, and first I'm going to invite up Ann Lopez to go over what our current practice is, and then we'll talk about some proposed changes.
Long time no see. So like Amanda stated, your current policy that you guys have for your financial policies and procedures was adopted in 2005, 15 years ago. Right now, you as a board, you approve your budget in 2 public hearings. Your first one will be in August, your second one in September. Your chairman and treasurer sign off on all authorization for disbursements. This lets our finance department know that you've authorized and are aware of the payments that are going to be made, that we as the city make on your behalf, because both the DDB and city accounts, they're all together. You do not have any requirements for soliciting for quotes, and you also do not allow for staff to approve disbursements of funds on your behalf. And all records are maintained with CRA staff. So we as staff have binders that contain all of your records. Since 2005, the city has updated their financial system. We are now using a system called Munis. One of the things with that's a really great thing for me, is it now maintains all financial records electronically. So I no longer have to keep paper copies. Beforehand, whenever there was an invoice that was paid with an authorization for disbursement that the chairman and treasurer signed, we held those at the end of the year. They would be then given to the auditor for the auditor to create the report, and then finance then became the record holder. We no longer have to do any of that because it's all maintained electronically through this system. With Munis, we now have 4 levels of approvals. So I enter your invoices in the system once they've been approved for payment. Amanda approves them. From there, they go over to our finance assistant director who oversees all of the DDB financials, and that goes to a 4th person. So we now have a 4 sets of eyes that look at every invoice that you as the DDB approve. Whereas before with the old system, there were only 2. It would be myself and the CRA director. So that's kind of how your current policies are set up for those procedures based on your 2005 adopted policies for financials.
Great, thanks, Ann. So, as we're looking at
Changing what you have in your agenda there is the old policy and then the new policy. And a couple of different things. One, still payments for goods and services for the DDB have to have a written agreement or be part of the annual budget, right? So your written agreement would be something that you would have, say, for the Ruth Eckert Hall grant or the Jolly Trolley, contract for services. Something that's part of your adopted budget is your legal expenses, right? You adopt a budget category for that, and then an invoice is submitted, but you don't have a written agreement with your DDB attorney. If there's not a written agreement, like we were just saying, then someone still has to submit an original invoice in order to get that payment. And then payments, right now, we're still saying that if there's an event, that you guys will disperse money after the event has occurred, unless there's some part of that approval where you need it beforehand. So, say for some reason that they're asking for DDB funding for rental of a space, right? And they've got to pay for the space to hold it in advance before the event actually happens. And if there's something that's over $2,500 and it's not a single source, so if you're doing like you guys did a mural on the side of the Pro Shop Pub, that's considered a single source, right? You choose this artist, they're the only artist who can do that particular mural, that's single source. If it's something else that's not single source, then we're gonna go ahead and solicit 3 quotes for you guys to consider once it gets over $2,500. So
Now,
those,
I have a question for you. So if we just designated it as sole source, it wouldn't require 3 quotes? If we just said it was a sole source thing, or would everything require 3 quotes?
no, if it's sole source, so there's kind of a standard definition for sole source. That's the only reason why I pause. So for example, if you have a consultant who does a financial feasibility analysis, right, that's not sole source. There's a lot of different consultants who can do financial feasibility analysis. But let's say if it was someone who specifically does it on the rental of boat slips and they have a special expertise on the rental of boat slips, then that could be argued as a single source. And there's nothing per se that requires you to get quotes. It's just a good practice, right? Because you could also have a policy that says we only want to hire goods and services that are within the DDB district.
I mean,
Right.
doesn't the city have like a $50,000 limit where they have to go for like an RFP or an RFQ versus selecting?
Yes.
But 2,500 is very less, right? I mean, I think it's easier if you just go with a single source, isn't it? It's like adding a layer of bureaucracy.
It is, but it's a good practice. I mean, the DDB doesn't buy a lot of things. You just buy a very tiny amount of things. But I think from a staff perspective that we thought this was something that is a good financial management best practice to bring to you and wouldn't be overly burdensome.
So when you say soliciting quotes, it's just like making phone calls and getting a quote. We're not talking about an RFP.
Correct. Yeah, no, this can be email, this can be over the phone, this could
Just
even be in
getting
person.
three quotes,
Just
period.
getting 3 quotes.
Yeah. So it's not, there's
Right.
nothing
No, we're not talking
very
about
onerous
issuing
about
requests
it.
for proposals. If there's anything that goes to the level of needing requests for proposals, then we will put on our hats as CRA and we will be doing that work for you. That's like, for example, the lighting project for Cleveland Street, right? The DDB I hope, will participate as a funding partner, but that money will just transfer to the CRA and us wearing our CRA hats, we will take care of all the purchasing requirements for that. Does that
Yeah, that
make you feel better? Okay.
Yeah. I was thinking, again, I need to be reading the 50 stack papers.
No. I mean, again, this is probably going to be rare, but let's say that you wanted to buy some type of benches or something, right? Or even for, the dolphins or dolphin repair or something like that. And it's like, well, actually, there's more than one person who can do mosaic tile work, right? Or repair concrete. Then we want to make a couple of phone calls. We don't want to just say like, oh, I found that one person, here you go. Right? Because you're going to say, are you taking the best care of our money?
So it would be, our administrators would determine which items, first, that they're over 2,500, and secondly, that it isn't a specific expertise that's there, that it is applicable to quotes.
Correct.
So both of those criteria would be in place. Okay, I understand. That I don't have a problem with that.
So the other two items, and they could either fall under policy here, they aren't contained in this current draft, or they can go in your bylaws, and I think right now they're in the draft bylaws, but I need to make sure, is that you have had a practice of adopting a minimum reserve amount of $75,000 as part of your annual budget. So if you want to keep with that policy or that practice, that needs to be captured here or in the bylaws. And then you've also have a practice of adopting the financial statements, right, like you just did. But right now, that's not written down anywhere. And those two are probably bylaw ones, but I just want you to note that. So the other proposed changes, which I'll go into, that get into process. So that's kind of the policy, the big agreements. And then when you get into the procedures here, there's really 3 different kinds of expenses, right, or transfers of money that you guys do. There's transfers, and that's going to be between the Downtown Development Board and the CRA and other city departments. And there's purchasing of goods and services, whether by invoice, what we call a purchase card, which is our city credit cards, or grants. So what we're looking at is changing that expenditure approval. That's what we're recommending, so that myself or my designee can have some permission up to some level of the authorization for disbursement, of signing off on that. And then just for you to know, overall, all records are going to be maintained in Munis, in the software. We're not going to keep paper copies of 10-year-old receipts anymore in a file folder. Everything's scanned in, it's all kept electronically. So I just gone over the types of expenditures here. So when you guys spend money, it's in these kind of categories. The one that you see the most is going to be grants. That's the one that so far you call out in a line item. You say, Downtown Merchants Association, $15,000 for special events, right? And you really don't see a lot of the other expenses because they're just ongoing ones, mostly to like the auditor or to the county tax commissioner. And so what we're proposing as a new process is that you still approve expenditures either as part of your annual budget process or as an agenda item at a regular meeting. Right? So you're either going to see at the beginning when you say legal services, $5,000 a year, it's in our budget, or you're going to see a specific agenda item like what we just heard, right, that free ride request if they come forward and ask for funds. Then myself or the designee can sign authorizations for disbursement for up to $10,000 per invoice. So instead of every invoice or expenditure coming to the treasurer and the chair for sign off, if it's something that's already been a part of a vote and it's under $10,000, then myself or the staff can sign off on it and it can go into Munis, and it still goes through those 4 layers of people checking it before the check is sent out the door, with one exception for grants. Right, so if it's the Boxcar Rally or the Superboat Championship, any type of grant, we would still have the chair and the treasurer sign off on that request for funding. And that's for two reasons. One, so you guys know that it's happening, right? And I think it's kind of fun, right, to be able to approve the expenditures for those kind of items. And that's the quickest way we can communicate that this expense is happening and here's what it's for, right? So you remember, I remember we approved it to buy the wood for the box cars, and here I see Home Depot, here's the wood purchase, and I'm signing, you're signing off on that. And then every month we'll report back on, instead of just giving the broad categories, we'll say, okay, here's the checks that went out the door, right? So you'll be able to see that list of what I or my staff have signed off on and started through that approval process.
I'm curious, what prompted for it to be 10,000? Why not 5? Why not 15?
10,000 covered most of your regular reoccurring expenses.
Okay.
But it could be, it could be any amount you're comfortable with. But if you look at that financial statement.
I'm trying to think, what regular expenses do we have?
Legal advertising is probably your most regular.
But that's like less than $100 usually.
It is.
Yeah.
Your biggest expense is typically going to be more one-time expenses like the audit, right? Or certain, legal work invoices, which again, you don't have many of.
Pretty thrifty group.
We don't spend too much money. I would think because there's a very small number of transactions that are over 3,000 or 5,000 or whatever, I would just as soon see those just so that just to make sure that we see them. Otherwise, we don't really have an
You'll
easy
see
way to
every
them.
transaction every month at the monthly report.
Well, yeah, that's buried in Granicus, and I don't know
we
that
can
everybody-
provide it in a different format.
Yeah. I would like to go back to the old-fashioned paper copies of the monthly financial statement and a paper copy of the. Of
Have
what you're
we
proposing.
spent much in the past couple months?
No, we've only spent $13,000 or 10 something so far through January. We don't know about February yet.
We have one for the audit, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we can provide paper copies of the agenda.
No abacus. I'm that one.
So I just don't think that everyone, if we took a poll, I think it'd be a very small number of people that actually go into that thing and read that statement and look at it. And I think if it was presented to us, we would actually look at it more closely and exercise our responsibilities better. But
I'm guilty. I have no idea where that is.
it's in the link that announces the meeting with the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, but you'd have to click on that link and then click on where it leads.
And then you click on the agenda item, so the number in front of it, and then you'll see in the main body of the page, there's text description, and then there's attachments at top.
Which 11 clicks later, you lose interest and you just don't even look.
And
Yeah, I used to look at all the, the monthly printed statements when we would get it, the written and the full agenda. And I find it dropping out now. It's harder to do.
What was in it? But it says adopted.
If we reduced the 10,000 to 5,000, that would still handle the vast bulk of disbursements very efficiently.
So what do you think?
Does this create a lot of extra work for you guys?
Not for me. My life, I still have to go through and review everything in Munis for all expenses, no matter what, right? For everything for DDB and CRA, I'm still looking at every single thing. But for the chair and the treasurer and for And it means coordinating signatures, right, on a lot of different pieces of paper. And we can keep doing it that way. It's not ruining anyone's life. But and again, as we're trying to be proactive and assuming you guys are going to be giving more grants in the future and doing more things, right, as we're house cleaning and making things more streamlined and clear, we don't want to be in a situation where we're having to chase people down to sign forms for something that's already been approved in a public hearing, and then we're reporting back on at the next meeting, and we have 4 other people signing off on it to make sure we didn't spend it on cardboard boxes instead of right, what it was supposed to be spent on. So for us, it's an efficiency, right? This does increase efficiency. We think of everybody's time. That's why we're recommending it, but we also want to balance that with the transparency. And keeping everyone informed on what's happening. So between the monthly reporting and by still having board members directly sign off on the grants, I feel that's the right balance of keeping kind of the boring generic stuff out, you know, that you don't have to worry about it, but the things that are interesting and that would change all the time and could be controversial, those are still the things that you will directly see and sign off on.
Yeah, just so everybody's familiar, a lot of the disbursements that we sign are like $33 items for a newspaper ad or $7 for some stationery supplies.
And you have to chase it down for everyone?
Well, they don't chase me down. They accumulate a bunch of them, and then the binder either gets dropped off at my store or it's brought to the meeting. It happens a couple of times a month. But for the $33 items, it's just basically, you know, petty cash. It's not, we don't need a great deal of oversight on an item like that. But items that are like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, I think the board should still be involved and have a look at it. And they don't happen that often, so it's not that big a deal, I don't think, to do it.
Well,
I'm okay either way.
Yeah.
I like to stick with their recommendations though, because they put that out there for a reason. And I'd like to make their lives a little easier.
Well, and it's really, I mean, you guys are the volunteers, right?
Yeah.
We get paid to chase you down. So we really want to make the best use of your time in the way that you're comfortable.
I think the difference in the amount of work it would save to have it at 5 rather than 10, we're talking like a few items a year. It's not like it's not a big
I don't care either way,
efficiency
so.
move. And it would keep us more aware of what's going on.
Mr. Treasurer?
Yeah, I think $5,000 and controversial items is.
Okay, I agree,
We
5,000.
manually check it, yeah, other than
Define
$5,000.
Well, grants.
And grants.
Grants.
If there are any pickles or hot sauces, I'll be interested to see that specific item. Other than that, 5,000, I'm okay.
All right.
Now, do we need a motion?
Yes, so we would be looking for a motion to adopt it as amended with the $5,000 limit.
Okay, does someone?
I move that we do 5,000
And
and the other thing.
The amendment.
is that a second?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there any additional discussion?
And public comment if there's going to be any.
Right. Okay, and are there any citizens that want to comment on this motion?
There's
Okay.
one citizen sitting in the group.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Okay, let's move on to the next item.
Okay, so as we were, the free ride was really the kind of perfect lead-in to what Howard is going to walk you through now, which is a discussion on grant funding.
So as we continue to kind of walk through the change in updating the bylaws, kind of want to discuss the grant funding for proposing to develop a new framework for the DDB grant funding, So what I'm initially opposing that we basically outline 3 categories, for funding requests. And those categories would be marketing, business assistance, and also projects. And these categories already fall in line to the fiscal allocated budget, so these are the 3 that we're recommending that we use. So with that, in my 3 months of being here, when I talk about the DDB, and as I'm going out meeting with different businesses and merchants and discussing the DDB, there's somewhat of a misunderstanding of what the catchment area is. So with that, this is the area based off the guidelines map that the DDB supports. When we look at having funded events, primarily all those events happen in the downtown area or directed to the downtown area for Cleveland Street. So one of the things that I'm proposing, since we have approximately $175,000 a year in grant funding and programs and projects, is that with the governor's new bylaws, that we look at expanding the area for DDB services.
It's even more like the 400 block, the majority, right?
Yes. So in doing such, when we look at the categories that people could put in funding requests for, one, the request would come under marketing. So in the current allocations, what we have for marketing, we have the Jazz Festival for downtown, the Sand and Suds, and then an example of that would be the business assistance, and that's covering the Jolly Trolley for the downtown loop and the holiday lighting. And then we talk about projects, the project specifically that we could consider right now would be the Cleveland Street project. And if we was to do something with the free ride, then that could also come under projects. And then this kind of keeps us in line with the categories that are focusing on the 2018 work plan for the current budget. Okay.
So, go back one slide, please, Howard. So this is our first recommendation that we're looking for feedback from you guys on, is that as we start fielding these kind of funding requests, like a free ride or, you know, the Daffin Dreams fashion show, whatever it may be, that the first thing we want to do is start to direct people to one of these three categories, right, that we'll kind of organize within this framework, which is what the original Collaborative Labs work plan that the DDB developed came up with these three areas, and now we've organized the budget this way. Is this
This is just naming it, basically.
right?
Just what category you put it.
Well,
Sounds good to me.
and it's a simplified process for the application, which we'll go to.
Will this result in someone come in with some project or something that, they don't call it a project, you call it something, and for some reason doesn't fit in that category? Did they get rejected, or?
It would be hard, so let's say they want, it'd be hard to imagine what they would ask for that wouldn't fit under downtown revitalization in one of these three categories. It would be very hard.
Sleigh rides on a snowy day,
Right.
Marketing.
would that be marketing? A sleigh ride on a snowy day, yeah?
Yeah, I think projects would be things like the marina,
Mm-hmm.
street lighting, some major improvements that we undertake
Right.
on a district-wide basis that leaves a footprint afterwards. It's not an event, in other words.
Right, or someone could come and say, you know, we really want to install electric vehicle charging stations in 2 areas
Right.
within the DDB district.
So it's just,
Right, that could be a project.
it's just a way to think about what we're spending money
Yeah.
on. If we spent $5,000 putting DDB dolphins around the downtown, that would probably be a marketing expense. But if we spent $100,000 building obelisks for the entrance to downtown, that would be a project.
Yeah.
That's
Okay, so we just basically, it's a name.
just a way
It's
to
not
name,
gonna
just a way to
exclude anyone.
categorize, basically.
I don't think
No,
so.
they'll find a
Okay.
way to.
We'll get to excluding in a minute.
We'll make Howard's life simpler.
I have a question for Howard. So you mentioned the map and a push, did I understand you right? You want to push things out into the whole boundary because it's too centralized right now? Is that what I was understanding?
Well, for the most part, in making sure that, and we can incentivize it, that we could do projects, since this map covers the whole DDB area, we can do projects off of Cleveland Street, either at a particular business site or at a designated area for somebody that submitted a proposal. So the way that,
I like that idea because the guy that just presented basically talked about 5 locations all within 10 yards of each other, right in the 400 block. And a lot of the activities I've participated in are there or Coachman Park. So I like the direction you're going. That may need to be its own category, off Cleveland, off the 400, 500. I don't know.
Is there a reason why it was just Cleveland in the past?
Yeah, I can address that. Years ago, maybe 10 years ago, there was no definition or any stated goal on what our money was going to be spent on. Just if somebody came up to us and asked us for something, if there was a fit of enthusiasm for that particular, it didn't have to align with any of our goals or purposes. The money just went, and it was kind of a shotgun approach, just here and there. So a decision was made that if we want to revitalize the downtown with the limited funds that are available, if you scatter them all over the place, it doesn't create any kind of meaningful impact. And the idea was to revitalize the main street first and to focus the attention on funding events that brought people to Cleveland Street. That's why we got away from spending a large proportion of our discretionary budget on events that were in Coachman Park, because those did not typically result in any result for downtown. It's in the downtown district, but it doesn't really benefit any of the downtown property owners to have an event in Coachman Park. No one has come up to me and said, when there's an event in the park, that it benefits my property values, that it benefits my restaurant sales, that it benefits my retail sales. There just is no benefit. So we started reducing funding for things like fireworks for the 4th of July down on the waterfront, or the events that take place primarily in Coachman Park. And we started saying to people that wanted money, like for the Clearwater Jazz Holiday, they would come to us and ask for $10,000, or at one point it was $25,000. And we said, we will give you a grant, but put a component on Cleveland Street. And then they started the jazz walk, or a jazz component right on Cleveland Street, or an extra day of events that took place only on Cleveland Street. So that was the thinking behind that, was to have something that would impact. If we could revitalize, we don't have the funds to revitalize all of downtown at once. But if we can revitalize the main street, even block by block, or the 3-block section that's most retail, that creates a destination, and then it'll expand outwards. Just like Dunedin started with that one street, and now it extends many streets out in various directions. But at the beginning, if they had just did something over here and something 3 blocks away and something 4 blocks away, there was no critical mass. Nobody would notice.
Right.
I totally agree with that. Every downtown should have a main type of street, because the rest of it will happen if that street gets hot.
Yeah.
The rest will just.
What happens
It's a
is
little
those
counter to
places
what
fill up, and then it overflows to the next street,
Exactly.
the next street, the next street.
But you're suggesting we push it out, aren't you?
Well, I think it's a twofold process. Part of this is, one, still to be able to have events that are in the area. So if I came to you as a merchant and I want to have an event, then maybe the incentive for me doing it on Cleveland Street could be there from a funding perspective. Or if I did not want the additional funding and I wanted to have the event at my particular establishment or somewhere adjacent to, as long as it's within a defined area, then I can still have the event. It's foot traffic, it's people coming on Cleveland Street or off Cleveland Street.
Well, I think what we're suggesting too is look at, as we're going through the new work planning process, the new budgeting process, we've got new members, that it's time to, you might end up with the same place of limiting to Cleveland, but at least broaden the conversation to get some feedback and see what's arising, because maybe you pivot and focus more on transportation. Maybe you decide that's where you can have the most impact in the next 2 years, is all connecting beach and downtown, right? And you want to focus in your funding there. Maybe you want to focus more on businesses on other blocks where some other successes are occurring. Maybe, we don't know, right? That's why we're having this conversation, and we're going to have an exchange of information. But we think it's a good time to consider a little more broadly.
I agree. And what I said explained where we're coming from, not necessarily where we need to stay and continue. But that's the reasoning behind where we came from. To take the opposing view and be the devil's advocate on for a bit, if I owned a business that wasn't on Cleveland Street, I'd feel a bit left out of
Right.
I pay the same rate of taxes as the people on Cleveland Street. Why aren't I eligible for some of this money?
And
And
part of
it's
that,
only fair that they would be.
and part of this too is making sure that people have an understanding of what the DDB is and how they support downtown as a whole. So if through my travels in communication with different merchants and businesses that are in the district, a lot of those businesses, at least from what I've communicated with, do not have a clear understanding of what the DDB is and then how they support the downtown. Because majority of all the events that take place happen on Cleveland Street, not necessarily close to them or in their backyard, but they're all in the same catchment area for the zone.
While we're at this, I'd like to get a little better flow of, the proposals come all through CRA, or do we have citizens just out of the blue show up here and they want to do that? Do we get to, or in the past, has the CRA members ever proposed concepts, or it's only the flow is this way as opposed to?
So,
We've had a
as we,
couple. Oh, yeah, I'll take it, Howard, just because you're only 4 months in. So, and then Paris will correct me what I've missed out on. So, requests come from CRA staff, requests come from board members, requests come on a rolling basis from the general public or business owners. In the past, there was a call for special event ideas in May, and they would fill out a form. You would get a big binder, and then as part of your budget process, you would hear from those applicants and decide, okay, Achieve a Boxcar Rally, you've asked for 5,000, we're gonna give you 1,500, and then it goes into the budget and it happens in this year. And there was one time in which special events applicants could come in and ask for funding. And then it was considered as part of the budget process. And then typically it was like, well, you know, we've allocated most of our money and you're gonna have to wait until next year if you want funding for your special event.
So is there how are we communicating to downtown businesses and entrepreneurs that we are here to help them? How do we communicate?
well, that's part of the recommendation for us to kind of broaden the vision and the expansion for what we do. And even going through, and I'll get to it, kind of redeveloping the application process.
But he's going door to door. Did you know that?
No, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
How,
Howard does it door to door.
oh my, okay.
So right now, because the person who was previously in this position, and there's a long history with that, but she was very much focused on the 400 through 700 blocks of Cleveland. And then there was a different department that had a different person that was focused on everything outside of that, right, within the DDB district. And and those efforts were not coordinated, right? And who were they reaching, how were they reaching, what were consistency of meetings? So what we've started to do now, Howard's established a monthly meeting for the entire CRA, which includes the DDB, right, where people can come and learn about different programs, right? Since Rosemary's come on board, we have a much more active website and email newsletter and, you know, all the social media. And that's part of this process, right, is we need to know what to communicate to people, because right now it's very ad hoc. Right, if someone gets to me, they probably get the most comprehensive picture of what's available, right, across the two entities, right? And Howard has specific grant programs like the facade grant that he's managing. And so that's part of this, is we really want to work with you to get a good idea of where you guys can be most effective, what you're most interested in, and then turn around and build a promotions campaign around that so that we can get the word out more broadly.
One of the things that's, because a lot of the board members are new, and things have changed over the last couple of years in terms of who's asking for grants. Say 5-6 years ago, there was the same dozen applicants would appear every year, make their pitch in April or May, and then we would pass the budget in August and September, and they would receive their money the following fiscal year. And 90% of our funds, or maybe 80% of our funds, were distributed in that way, where people would come, give their 3-minute presentation, give us a handout with what they were planning to do, and we would consider it and vote on it, in the following months. Now, a lot of those entities have gone away or are no longer coming to ask us for money. So for example, the Merchants Association for a few years was very active and would come to us and ask for funds for different events that they were putting on. We haven't seen anything from them recently. The city, Parks and Rec, would ask us for money for various events that they were putting on. And last year they decided to just fund it on their own and not ask us for any money. So those events went away. So we actually have a scarcity of viable projects that people are asking us for funds for right now.
More discretionary funds.
It's a good thing in terms of we have more discretionary funds. What we're suffering from a scarcity of is good ideas on how to effectively maximize what we're doing with our dollars. And to answer the question about how are we letting people know this, one of the things that I thought would be useful would be if we had an email blast that was going out that communicated not only what the CRA is doing, but a monthly newsletter on what the DDB was up to and what our news was, and that we should grow that list. And it should include not just it should very definitely include all our property owners, so that they know what we're doing, but
They're paying.
sort of like a summary of what we're doing on their behalf. And number two, not limited to just that, but to get as big an email list as possible to let people know what events are coming up and improve the participation.
I'm just curious, has anyone ever proposed sort of signs to route people from the beach to tell them there is a downtown here, or as they come down Court?
We do have a wayfinding project that should be it should have been let out to bid for construction many months ago, but I'm told that is imminent. So we do have a new wayfinding program. It's been designed, it's been approved, we have the money for it, we just need to hire someone to build it.
And
Yeah.
the current facade program, that's a CRA program at this point?
Correct.
Okay. See, that's another example of something the DDB used to have, a facade program, and also a program for, I forget what the program was called, but where if businesses or restaurants wanted to put tables and chairs out on the sidewalk, it was like the Cafe Society type theme, and the DDB was funding that as well. Also, there was an awning program.
Yeah.
There was a facade improvement, awnings, and tables and chairs. And the DDB had money set aside every year in its budget for that. It didn't have a lot of applicants for it, so we kind of dropped it.
I like awnings, especially that I'm hair challenged. Vote for that again, just
Yeah.
for the record.
Well, I think, would that qualify as a facade?
That's part of the facade program.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've seen, we've more than doubled our number of facade grants since we revised the program in 2018, in early 2018. I mean, the challenge before was the funding amount was too low and it was too cumbersome in order to obtain the grant. So, I mean, we fixed it. And now it's easier, and now we're getting more with, Howard out there promoting it. I mean, it takes a lot of marketing and a lot of promotion to get people to apply and know what's available.
And at one time, there was like a retail and restaurant improvement grant of up to $35,000. And we didn't have too much success with that program. One, there was a limited, it didn't create a big inflow of businesses into downtown to take advantage of it.
Maybe full-page ad in papers and on TV, free money, come down.
Yeah.
35 doesn't do much for a restaurant.
No, it's not enough to make the difference.
Yeah.
And number two, we did do a couple of grants, and one of them was successful and stayed for a while. The other one folded within a very short amount of time. So there's a risk involved when you make large grants out of a limited budget.
Maybe hire guys in front of Court Street as they're going with the sign that will flip, visit downtown.
You could do that.
So then, if we agree that there is a need to be able to basically make some additional changes to the process that we currently have for expanding the services, for funding requests. The goal would be to make all the properties in DDB eligible for grant funding by expanding outside of Cleveland Street. Also allow for funding, as Amanda just spoke to, allow for funding during all stages of a project, from the initial idea all the way to the promotion of the idea for it being completed. In addition to consider grant requests on a rolling basis, so not necessarily having just one set time when people come in and do their pitch for funding. This literally could be done throughout the course of the year for any applicants that's willing and want to apply for assistance from the DDB for funding.
I like it.
Okay. So going to the next phase of the funding request. We want to use the existing DDB work plan process to determine the type of grant request the DDB wants to incentivize. So the example of this could be like a mural incentive program, incentive events to happen on Cleveland Street opposed to the expanded area. Also defines amounts by the budget categories for expenditure. So as an example, in the business assistance line item, it could be like $50 allocated in that. And then from there, do we want to have predetermined grant amounts for funding, anything from $500 or $200 up to the maximum. So on that note, when we look at it, does the DDB want to fund a percentage of a request? So if I came and I requested $500 and the DDB say, well, we'll fund 10% of that request, or do we want to fund the total amount requested from the applicant?
So these are all different considerations. So, we wanted to take those kind of bullet point by bullet point for feedback from you guys, because that's a lot of information. Right, so we threw some examples up there, but as we go through the work planning process, you might decide we want to focus all on, recruiting high-tech companies, or we want to focus this year completely on signage, right, and pushing new and better signage throughout downtown, or we're all about playable cities. We want more fun public art and infrastructure projects that encourage play. Whatever it may be, right, and that's where you can take the opportunity to focus in, right, and direct the funding, so that when we're meeting with applicants, we're like, yeah, you could ask for whatever, fill in the blank, but really the DDB is interested in these kind of projects. If there is something, you don't have to narrow down. And then for budget categories, I know the question is always, well, what if we spend all our money in the first month on one thing, right, and we don't get any help with business assistance, that this would be the point in time where you can weigh out your priorities. If you have, let's make the math easy, $100,000 to spend, and you want marketing to have 50, business assistance 25, projects 25, or shift that number however you like, because we're not going to know every single request at the beginning of the year. And then if you change your mind, you can always transfer money. But that kind of gives us a guide, again, to say if someone comes in and says, I want $200,000 for lease reduction on my business, we can say, well, their total budget for grants is only $25,000. So
I think the idea of having an annual work planning session where we hammer out and discuss some of these points is extremely valuable. We've only done it once, really. So I think we need to do that annually until we feel we've refined it enough to where it doesn't need refining. And even then, you'd have to revisit it every so often. So I think that's valuable. Number two, the budget categories. That can help clarify thinking and leave money there for things that you have as priorities. But the downside of that is sometimes the thing that you've allocated money for that in that year doesn't happen for some reason or another. And then that money doesn't actually go towards anything that it was intended for that year. It does become available for reallocation, or it does flow into the next year. But it's not like we had set aside money for a list server for Stu.
right.
Right. there's no list server. So
Well,
that,
and that's something we'd want to look at in July,
yeah,
right? And we're going to check in and say, is this really happening or not? And if it's not, then we need to transfer the money to
and put it
where
somewhere
it's going to
else.
be used.
Yeah, or if we said, you know, we're gonna do a restaurant incentive grant for 35,000, and that was, you know, 35,000 comes out of the budget and gets allocated for a restaurant improvement, and then no one applies for it, well, that 35 grand is available to be reallocated towards the end of the year. If you see nobody's applying for it, and somebody else applies for something else, you can use that money for that. But it is a good idea to sort of prioritize where you want your money to go in your head. For the predetermined grant amounts, I think it pigeonholes. There's a problem I see with just having a blanket amount. It depends what kind of an event it is. Some events, a concerned citizen or an involved citizen, a volunteer, comes up and says, I want to do this thing, and I want to put on this kind of event. I want to put on a wine and something party in the downtown. I don't have a wine place. I don't sell wine. I'm not going to make any money off it. I'm just a volunteer, and I think it would be a good thing. Well, we wouldn't want 50% participation by that person. If he's willing to volunteer and put on this event, we would fund it 100% if we thought it was a good thing to fund. If somebody else wants to have a block party for their business and close off the street and put a party out there and wants some help from the DDB to do that, and we think there's a value and they're going to bring traffic downtown, then we might say, yeah, but you got to spend some money on your own, and we'll pay for half of it, or we'll pay a third of it, or something. Somebody else that just wants to have, in their restaurant, they want to bring in talent and have a band performing inside their restaurant, we might just say, yeah, that's one of your business expenses. We're not really going to pay for it, and we're not going to fund it at all.
Of course.
I'm more for a percentage as opposed to a fixed amount, because that way we can incentivize them to do or move forward with it.
Well, again, it depends on what, if it's somebody that is just volunteering to create something for us, that's willing to put in the sweat equity, then it's unfair to ask them, how would they come up, if we're only going to pay 50%, where's the other 50% come from?
Well, that's what we decide. That we say, okay, we'll pay all of it, or we'll pay a percentage, if the person's going to make it into a business for them.
It depends on what it is. Some things are worth more money
Mhm.
because they'll produce more action.
Okay.
Another criteria, I think, is that when people would bring requests to us, and they'd ask for a certain amount of money, and then one of the board members would ask, well, who's coming? And they would say, well, we're going to have 5,000 people coming, and somebody else would say, I'll have 200 people coming, and they're both asking for $20,000. Well, we don't want to spend $40 to bring somebody downtown so they can spend $5. The numbers don't work. But if we can bring 5,000 people downtown and spend $10,000, that's $2 a person to bring somebody downtown. That might be worth it. So there's that calculus.
Each event should be individualized and based on its value.
Yeah, what does it do for downtown?
Exactly. How much they're kicking in. What's their past history?
Is the purpose on this to change something we already do?
Today?
Yeah, is that what this?
Well, it is.
I think we're
It's
just
looking at.
to generate discussion. Right?
Generate the discussion around it, but also generate more discussion around the application process, which is kind of the next phase. So in talking through having predetermined amounts, also budget allocations, then we can kind of move into updating the application process. Because this is one of the processes that we want to streamline. So currently, right now, we have a 3-application process that's pretty detailed and pretty lengthy. And then again, it speaks to what happens downtown on Cleveland Street. So we kind of want to go through and kind of redefine that process. So here's what I'm proposing. That the application applicants complete the funding request form and then meets with the staff for review. And at the time that they meet with the CRA for review for the staff, we will gather all the information, stuff that's needed. Then we turn around and the staff sends the application to the DDB via email for feedback. And then from there, then.
Pause for a second. So this is not your vote, right? This is not hosting a meeting. This is, you all have different questions and different kinds of information. And what we want to do is, instead of someone coming to a meeting and then we hear all the questions and then they have to wait 30 days to come back and answer them, that we would send that out and say, you know, are there specific questions you have, right, about this proposal, that we can go ahead and start gathering that information, right, that might not have been, especially if we leave it very open in this way. And then you might say, well, how many people do they come? Well, are they the kind of people who spend $2 downtown or $200 downtown? What are, you know, well, tell me more about your marketing partners, or is this event happened anywhere else, right? If we're gonna go, everyone's unique and special, right, then we wanna flesh out that information, additional information that you guys would want in advance so that we can prepare them, right, for the meeting.
Yeah,
I like
Police Revised Fund does that.
I like
So it
that.
speaks to the uniqueness for each person.
Right. Plus, we don't sit here for an hour over one, and then
Exactly.
someone comes up with another question that could have already been answered in an email.
Right. You have all the information up front. Any other additional requests that came out of that could be fed back. We gather information. So once applicant comes in, or once we come to the next meeting, we're able to go ahead and take and make the vote and then move it forward from there. And then it's a much more succinct process.
I really like it.
I think it's a good idea. I like the idea of the rolling requests throughout the year rather than just a once-a-year thing.
And simplifying it.
Because a hot idea could come up, something new, you know, we want to hear about it.
We have to find some way to take that multi-page proposal and winnow it down, but still get the essential information that we want.
Well, essentially this, and this is, again, just a draft, and we can dialogue to get more feedback information, but looking at what's existing, I've already kind of comprised some of those, and then there's another sheet that's more just a signature sheet for some of those key questions that was asked on the previous application. It's all combined in basically like a declaration page for review, and then the initial each one of those phases. So it's taking it from 3 pages to really try to condense it down to 2. And then you have the approval process, approved, denied, and then if the incentivized for Cleveland Street, that's also there for additional dollars.
Could it be an online form?
When you say online, you mean an edible form for being typed in? Yes, we can do that. So
The idea is you want to get more applicants.
Exactly.
They're bringing ideas.
So if we're expanding our area, we're expanding our reach, we're expanding the number
And
of
we could
different
forward
activities we can
the
have
link to that.
in downtown. Yes.
So I think it might be helpful to accompany the form, some helpful hints or some information to the prospective applicant on what we're looking for in the way, you know, what kind of proposals would we like to receive, and what do they do for the downtown, and you know what's important to us that they would include in their proposal. So some explanatory information on what would be the hot buttons for us that we want to see in a proposal for us to give it favorable review.
Okay.
Some of the stuff that's in the old one, I've always had a problem with, like, what does the DDB get for giving you this money? Like,
Right.
Yes.
you know, some of that should just cross it out.
Make it simple. More people will apply.
That's the thought. That's the thought behind the process. So like I say, make it a lot more succinct, make it easier to apply, make it easier to be able to communicate what the acts is, and then make it the process a lot more simpler for it to be approved.
Good
So if we expect our process, have it on a rolling basis, then that way it makes it a lot easier for us to have more events and fund more events in and around the downtown Clearwater area.
If from year to year in our workshop, we decide to focus on, you know, say, 1 year we're going to do, you know, $40,000 major events is going to be our focus this year, where some other year we might say we want to fund a lot of small events and we're willing to pay half of a $2,500 event that every little shop can do.
Mm-hmm.
That should be reflected in the accompanying document that the when they get the application, they also get this document saying this is what our priorities are for this year. If you'd like to put on an event, this is the kind of event we'd like you to put on.
You give them a sheet, this will help you get it accepted.
If you check off all these points, we'll give
Exactly.
you the money.
Don't expect to get all of it.
So that's basically my recommendation for funding and revitalizing the application process.
I like it,
Very good.
yes.
Okay, DTV bylaws conversation will continue next month. Elise Winters, the attorney, is still working on the election issues. So for the work plan tonight, just looking for your direction on the process to follow so we can get started on that. We heard back from a few of you that you just wanted to move with staff doing some in-house facilitation for the work plan versus bringing someone in or going away. So here we are. So at our April meeting, we'd like to invite the public to come from 6 to 7 and give feedback around your 3 kind of areas of activities. We'd also like to send out an electronic survey to solicit some feedback. So again, we can build on Howard's work of what are the property owners and tenants interested in this area, what kind of role would they like to see the DDB play, and understand who you guys are and what you do. And we'll have further conversation and, we'll be listening and we'll be hearing from you guys as well. We'll compile all that and then present it back in May and draft out a plan. And then in June, look for you to adopt the plan. And this would go through 2021,
Now,
a little more than a year.
I didn't quite catch, when is the workshop going to be? And it's going to be outside of a regular meeting, is it not?
I was proposing the same night as your meeting,
Mm-hmm.
an hour the same night.
Oh, just 1 hour? Mm. How long was our meeting for the workshop that we did?
So an hour for the public meeting.
Mhm.
And then when we were at Collaborative Labs, that was 4 hours.
And that was, and it's hard to do that long, but to do less, you don't really get that much done.
Well, I think it would come down to, let's see what else is here. I don't know that you need 4 hours because you already have your categories and you already really have a vision because of the work done in the ordinance, right? So you've already refreshed kind of what your reason and purpose and duties are, so we'd have that. And you already have your categories, so it's really brainstorming what you would want to work on within each of those categories.
This
And
is a
then-
public debate?
No, the board, a workshop.
Just a workshop.
So this would be for you guys, for the public, we would present that information, here's the DDB's purpose, and then we'd be soliciting ideas from them as well. So April's really kind of idea generation time, and then in May, you're gonna have to make some tough choices.
We had that locally.
Mhm.
Good. That at the time was way down St. Peter.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be here.
We have free ride sharing now.
It was
I
an
mean,
hour
if-
during rush hour and an hour back.
We would want to start working on now. So like last month, we did the presentation on creative placemaking and downtown, like what are kind of the tools and best practices for downtown revitalization, right? So if there were other topics you knew you were interested more in now, we'd want to prepare background information. If, for example, you said, okay, we want to know more about transportation, or we want to think more about connecting, right, the beach and downtown, and what are all the ways. If there's something, or we want to know about social media campaigns and how do they perform, right? If you want more information around certain areas about what's most effective, right, or what's worked and hasn't worked, then, there's some things we can work on now to have ready for April, or we'd identify those in April and report back in May. Right, because keep in mind, you have around $175,000 that's discretionary for you to spend on things that you guys want to do directly or to re-grant to others.
We could use some ideas or suggestions on what works, but most of the city revitalization project things that I've seen are big projects that are a lot of money, and
Right.
that's not us.
Well, part of that's why we're recommending that you engage with the community,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm sure the different business owners and property owners have ideas. And some are gonna have very large scale ideas, right? But a lot of them are gonna have smaller, very fundable ideas. So to hear, I mean, I have no problem with spending all your money, right? We can do that. We can recommend how to do that. But we'd like to give some other people a chance.
Is that what re-granting is we move it to another agency?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Not to another agency, but to an outside party.
So again, your
That's a
grants for
transfers
Ruth
to
Eckerd
other
Hall for
agencies.
Blast Fridays, you
They're
help
doing fine.
offset the cost of Jolly Trolley services. Right, when you pay, well, you've transferred money to the CRA to pay for certain marketing campaigns, right? But other than that, every time there's a special event and you pay that person to do the special event, that's a re-granting.
Okay.
Okay,
Defer to the chairman on this. What do you think?
so
I think
maybe,
this is fine.
plan on meeting a little earlier in April,
I think so, yeah.
and then we'll have some conversation, and then you'll have a short official meeting, and then we'll go into the public workshop.
Unfortunately, I won't be here next month.
You can have a proxy.
I trust you guys.
How long do you think for the whole meeting?
I mean, maybe start at 3 or 3:30.
Can everybody do that?
Yes.
We'll feed you.
Free food. Are you sure you're not coming, Sean? It's free food.
Yes, yeah, mail me the sandwich.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, good. And then we'll give you a copy of the survey to look at for feedback before we send that out as well. All right. I think this was next on you.
Now,
Oh, right.
next month is April, and we're
Yes.
gonna have the workshop and the bylaws discussion?
That's the plan.
Wow.
That's what she
But-
said, 4 hours.
Now that you mentioned that, that might not work.
So that's a,
Yeah, all
One-
right, let me figure that out.
it seems like a lot to bite off.
That is. I don't want to drive you guys that hard.
Okay. Good.
Might need espresso.
Have we had any musicians come and say, I want to go up and down the street, play music, make noise? And, have you ever had that?
We haven't had any type of, like Busker Fest or anything like that.
Yeah, because we were driving, going through Dunedin a couple of weeks ago, and there, and this guy walking around with a bagpipe.
Right.
Which is, and,
Bottle of scotch.
people will, a lot of,
And he got arrested
obviously people
later?
there, but people, or business owners say, go away, or come and stand in front of my shop.
They can play for tips, so we don't have to give them any money.
But bringing them in, or someone walking around with a trumpet or with a
No, that,
horn,
We can
or,
start a Shahab band.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I can play extremely well as long as it's off key.
there was an initiative a few years ago to put music outside of restaurants and businesses, and some businesses did that, and the DDB funded, a few $100s for.
Right.
And it's an inexpensive way, without a lot of risk, to create some kind of a thing. But just doing it once doesn't really create.
It attracts attention, that's the.
Yeah, but it has to be something with some continuity, where people know that every Friday night there's music
Right.
on Cleveland Street, and that's the night that there's musicians on the street or whatever. If you just do it once in a while, it doesn't really create any impact. Okay. Are we on to your?
Yes, just to let you know that the CRA is putting forward a request for a grant agreement with Amplify Clearwater, which is our Chamber of Commerce. to help with the special events process. So that if a business owner says, hey, I really want to do an event, but they're a smaller operation, that Amplify will fill out the paperwork and do a minimum level of marketing and promotion for it to work with the city staff, the special events city staff. And then we're having Parks and Rec also request co-sponsorship from the city in this upcoming budget for a certain number of events downtown to offset the cost of public safety. So along with what you guys are doing, we are trying to coordinate so that we can make sure more events are happening all the time. And one of the big pain points that we've heard is that merchants don't have time to fill out the paperwork or make the maps or do any of that process, so they'll have help with just that. Now, Amplify will not staff their event, will not find the talent, right? They're not the producers, they're just helping with the paperwork.
Who is Amplify and what is it exactly?
It's the Chamber of Commerce.
They renamed it.
The Chamber of Commerce is called Amplify?
Yes, the beach and the regional chamber merged together, and they have a new name called Amplify.
They changed the name.
Oh.
Now they have to spend years to let themselves know that they are Chamber of Commerce.
Okay. I had no idea.
I'm not doing their marketing, let's put it that way.
Okay.
And that's it.
Okay, so we'll move on. Chairman's reports. March 1st to the 31st is the Youth Art Month exhibit at the Clearwater Main Library, right here. As part of Clearwater's recognition of March's Youth Art Month, the March's Youth Art Month K through 8 art exhibition will be on display at the Clearwater Main Library in the Carnegie and Osceola galleries and the Youth Services area. On March 7th, Wild Splash at 1 p.m. in Coachman Park. It's an annual event. March 17th for everyone is Election Day. Please come out and vote. March 25th, there's the Free Electronics Collection and Recycling event, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Solid Waste Complex at 1701 North Hercules Avenue. On March 26th, from 10:30 till 12 p.m., 10:30 in the morning till 12 noon, the monthly business meetup with CRA staff at the main library. Is that in this room here?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then March 27th, we have Blast Friday, 5:30 p.m., featuring Pablo Cruz. And for more information, visit downtownclearwater.com. Okay, and with that, we'll go to the next item, board members to be heard for your final comments.
I have a interested group of people that want to come in and do some nice things downtown that could be the igniter of a booming downtown. And it involves the city hall. So I'm excited about getting that Ignacio to get back with me on the part.
So we're working on the request for information now,
Yeah.
and that'll be released at the end of March.
Mm-hmm.
And so the process is first we put out that, which is basically a marketing and advertising period for the properties along the bluff, the Harbor View site, the City Hall site, the Pierce Street property. And then there will be a referendum. Right now, we believe in November of this year, the city has to receive approval to sell or lease the Harbor View property or City Hall property. And then we would issue an official request for proposals, which is when any and all interested developers would submit the actual, here's what we want to build and here's how much we're willing to pay for it. And then the city,
Approximately when?
and that would be first quarter of 2021. And then the city would select a winning proposal.
So anyway,
It's a process.
once all that happens, I have a group of people that will do something to downtown that's never been done, and it'll be unbelievable. So I'm very excited about 21, I guess it is now.
We'll stay involved.
That's it.
Very good. Shaw?
Hello, and it was a good meeting. Thank you.
Very good.
Yes, something Amanda mentioned was the Wayfinder.
Yes.
That seemed pretty interesting to me, and then you mentioned it's been in the process, and so I just want to know a little bit more about just how I can get some information about how it is right now, why it's taking long.
Sure, I'm trying to think of where the plans, I don't know if the final design plans are posted anywhere because they're so large, but I'll try to see if I can get you guys a link to a Dropbox.
Okay.
So you can look at them. But essentially, the wayfinding plans were done for the entire city. And then ultimately, and we've been back and forth in separating them out for downtown and the beach versus 19 because of different state and federal approvals that have to happen for those roads. So the last thing that we were waiting on was the county sign off for one of the signs on the Duke Energy pedestrian overpass. But I think that's happened, and these are, they're brand new. They fit in with the color scheme of the current logo, so they're the kind of sandy tan bases with the silver and blue type lettering, and the downtown logo is on the ones downtown and a beach one on the beach. But huge directional signs for parking, right, and all the other things pointed out, so. But I'll try to find you guys a link that you can open.
Keenan.
Much to my wife's chagrin, I eat a lot of my lunches downtown and dinners, and I spend my money. And so there's a new restaurant, Veers, if you haven't been there, right on the, my monthly plug for a restaurant.
Yes.
Veers is it's a Greek family right by where the old Dunkin' Donuts was.
Oh, yeah.
Super great people, super good food, if you can check it out. That's number one. Two, Howard, I was thinking, the chamber has these ambassadors, right? And they're volunteer chamber members that go to the new businesses, and you could probably coordinate with them to help let it be known in this area, because they need reasons to go visit the businesses anyway to re-sign up the members, and they have these really nice ladies normally that go out and pound on those businesses to sign up every year, but then they could be dropping off some of the documentation.
Right, and I think that'll be worthy of me, a connection to be made, so
Yeah.
I'll do that and I'll follow up at the next meeting. So, thank you for the idea.
It's a little early, but I'm excited about the next work plan session. I want to add a work item. It is additional restrictions about the homeless in Station Square Park. I think we made some progress with it. We usually write letters of recommendation to the city council, but if we can have the DDB attorney this time to compare the ordinances of nearby cities like Dunedin and maybe other cities in Florida, draft an ordinance, and these homeless people are coming with their whole luggage, with their whole life things, but they're also putting some items in baby strollers, so you can't prevent a baby stroller, person with a baby stroller going to the park. So if we can have a balanced ordinance, and this time we make a little more progress than just writing a letter to the city council, if we can just draft a small ordinance and send it. If they approve it, they approve it. If not, maybe next year. Thanks.
And my final comment is I would like to, as I mentioned earlier, I would like us to have an email list of specifically of the property owners downtown, of the taxpayers to the DDB, so that we could survey them and find out what's needed and wanted from the property owners of the DDB, and also so that we could communicate back to them regular progress reports on what we're actually doing, and see if we can involve them or get more participation from the ratepayers that are funding our
That is a great idea.
board. So I'm not sure what the best way to proceed on that is.
I mean, we've continued to ask for email addresses, but that's all that we can do.
Yeah.
Right, is when we're mailing the ballots out and the forms, we say, give us your email address, and they get,
But did we,
added in.
in the last election, there was supposed to be something included asking for email addresses? Did it result in email addresses coming back? Okay. See, I'm thinking maybe we need to maybe fund a letter separate from the ballot with a communication saying why we want this, and saying We want to, the DDB represents you, the property owners. We want to know, we want to better represent you by knowing what you need and want from us. And please provide us with an email address so that we can communicate with you and ask you what you need and want, and so that we can tell you what we're doing.
And introduce ourselves. And maybe Howard, as you go visit these businesses, you may want to ask for contact information because board members who got elected by them would like to introduce themselves and have a direct communication to us.
Okay.
of that.
Well, for everyone that I'm going out in the community, have met with and will be meeting with, I get their information because I'm comprising a basic spreadsheet. So at the end of the time, I can say how many people we've connected with in the DDB, and the goal is to, in the downtown area. So the goal is to connect with all the businesses and the merchants owners. So that's something that's an easy lift.
That'd be awesome.
That would be very valuable, but that's just business owners. That's not the property owners. That's not the people that are actually paying
I mean,
taxes.
we need to think about this a little more, because some of the challenges of and think about, the city, right, has to communicate with all its residents and property owners all the time. And the number one most effective, the only way you can guarantee that is by mail, right? And then the second best way is if people sign up for something like, code alerts, right, or give their phone number where they're going to get auto calls and messages back. A lot of people are very hesitant to give their email because it's subject to public records, right? And even though it's rare that gets requested, they feel like they're handing their information over and someone's going to...
Somebody can request the mailing list?
Yes.
And then send junk mail to them?
Yes. So, and again, not common, but that's why from our mindset, we're like, of course, I'm going to sign up for this and I want all the information and it's going to be great, but that's not how everybody sees it, right? So we're always going to have to do a mixture of different methods, So I just say that to say that let us think carefully about the best use of time and of our resources and what it's going to get us to get to that communication that you guys are wanting.
Another approach, email is the least expensive way to communicate. And we could send out a dozen communications a year, and once we had the list, it wouldn't cost us anything really to do it.
Right.
Now, in the absence of that, or if that's really difficult to do, maybe we did the post office thing where you don't address it, but where it goes to every address in the DDB, and we just send out this thing and say, to the property owner, and hopefully whoever gets it routes it to the property owner, and they can write back. I don't know.
Right. Well, and then, all of our information is available, right? Once they know we exist, we're not hard to reach. And you guys are here every month. Right?
But they're not.
Right.
Yeah.
And part of that is the advertising.
Yeah.
Like we're just talking about, So all I'm saying is I think it's always going to end up being a mixture of both, and don't get your heart set too much on having a perfect email list. Because that's the resistance that we see now to people handing over emails.
Well, some would be better than none.
Who is the
Right.
keeper of the downtown email list?
Right now it's Rosemary, and we keep everything in a MailChimp database.
How big a list is that?
I don't know off the top of my head. Do you know, Ian? No, I don't know.
Also, the Downtown Business
Couple thousand.
Association, I'm sure they do have a contact list.
Amplify.
Of participating merchants.
Lena was the president of the group. What is that?
Oh, the Merchants Association?
Yeah, those
Yeah.
downtown, so.
But Howard's going to have all that, because he's going to visit every one of them.
Could we ask staff to get us an idea of how many names are in this email list and what it consists of? It doesn't have to wait till the next meeting. Just if somebody has an answer, they could just email it. That would be great. Okay. So with that, at 7:18 in the evening, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.